Welcome, beautiful Sigma ladies. Some women don't just break the mold, they erase it and leave everyone scrambling to figure out what rules they're playing by. Here's a fact most people don't realize. The human brain is hardwired to fear what it can't label. Neuroscience research shows we actually feel discomfort when someone doesn't fit into categories. Leader, follower, nurturer, rebel. We want people in neat little boxes because boxes make the world easier to process. Now imagine a woman who refuses every box you try to stuff her into. She isn't chasing attention, yet she gets it. She isn't competing, yet she intimidates competitors. She can be soft one moment and absolutely unyielding the next. That's the Sigma female, an enigma who makes the social rulebook look like a bad joke. And here's the kicker. Society doesn't know whether to crown her, cancel her, or fear her. Some call her arrogant, others call her cold, but the truth is, they're just confused. Because nothing frustrates people more than someone they can't predict or control. It's almost comical, really. While everyone else is playing loud games for validation, Sigma females are just sipping their coffee, minding their own business, and somehow still causing earthquakes without even trying. That paradox, the gap between who people think she is and who she actually is exactly why Sigma females are the most misunderstood women in the world. Number 1. They're seen as unstable because they shift roles fluidly. They're often labeled unstable because they shift roles fluidly, but that's not instability. It's adaptability that most people can't comprehend. A Sigma female can move between being nurturing and fiercely detached with a speed that unsettles others. One moment she's deeply empathetic, listening with genuine warmth, and the next she's cold and strategic, cutting through nonsense with surgical precision. To outsiders, that shift looks inconsistent, even deceptive, but it's actually her most powerful survival mechanism. Society is obsessed with consistency because it's predictable. People want others to behave the same way all the time, so they know what to expect. But Sigma females don't play that game. They read situations in real time and adjust themselves accordingly. Around someone fragile, they might step into the role of a gentle guide. Around someone manipulative, they'll harden instantly into an immovable wall. Around someone they love, they can be soft, but if that love is betrayed, they can just as easily become distant and unreachable. This unnerves people because it reveals how little control they truly have over her. What most fail to see is that this isn't performance, it's intelligence. The ability to shift roles isn't about being fake. It's about recognizing that life demands different responses at different times. While others cling to one identity, Sigma females move with agility, and that fluidity makes them unpredictable. That's where the misunderstanding begins. People confuse unpredictability with instability. They call it mood swings, inconsistency, or even coldness. But it's none of those things. It's a higher form of awareness. The ability to sense what a moment demands and become exactly that without hesitation. And here's where it gets uncomfortable. Most people feel threatened by that kind of power. They don't know what version of her they're going to get, so they label her unstable just to feel safe putting a name on it. But the truth is, she's not unstable. She's untouchable. Because while everyone else is trapped in rigid roles, predictable and easy to read, she's shape-shifting through situations in ways that keep her always one step ahead. That's not weakness. That's dominance disguised as flexibility. And it's exactly why Sigma females remain one of the most misunderstood forces in the world. Number 2, they're misunderstood because they don't sell their story. Sigma females are constantly misread because they don't sell their story the way most people do. In a world obsessed with broadcasting every detail of life from struggles to achievements, they remain silent. They don't explain themselves, they don't justify their choices, and they don't try to correct the misconceptions people form about them. This leaves a vacuum, and people hate vacuums. When there's no clear narrative to consume, others start filling in the blanks with their own assumptions, often the wrong ones. This silence is not weakness, it's control. By refusing to overexpose themselves, Sigma females deny the world ammunition. Most people reveal their vulnerabilities through oversharing, hoping for empathy or attention, but that same openness makes them predictable and easy to manipulate. Sigma females understand this, so they let people assume. If someone wants to believe they're arrogant, cold, or unapproachable, they don't waste energy fighting it. If someone thinks they're too private or mysterious, they won't argue otherwise. In their mind, why waste breath when assumptions say more about the other person than about them? The irony is that this refusal to explain only deepens the misunderstanding. To many, a woman who doesn't market herself feels suspicious, as though she must be hiding something. But the truth is simpler. She values her inner world too much to turn it into a public performance. She'd rather be misjudged than misused. This is why so many people walk away from interactions with Sigma females scratching their heads, uncertain about what just happened. They didn't get the neatly packaged story they expected, and that unsettles them. The brilliance in this silence is that it forces people to reveal themselves. When they try to interpret her quiet, they expose their own insecurities, their biases, their projections. Some will admire her self-possession. Others will resent her for not giving them what they want. But either way, she never loses. Because while others are busy defending, explaining, and proving themselves, she's conserving energy, maintaining control, and keeping her truth untouchable. That is the heart of why Sigma females are misunderstood. They don't live to be decoded, they live to be free. And in a world addicted to constant explanation, nothing is more disruptive than a woman who refuses to explain herself. Number 3. They reject both spotlight and shadow. Sigma females reject both spotlight and shadow because they refuse to be defined by extremes. They aren't seeking fame or admiration, so the typical rewards of attention, the applause, the validation, the social power, hold no real value for them. At the same time, they don't disappear completely. They don't shrink themselves to make others comfortable or fade into irrelevance to avoid scrutiny. Instead, they occupy a space that few people even notice exists, a sort of invisible equilibrium where they can move freely, observe the world, and influence it without being owned by it. Most people are conditioned to operate in extremes. Either you're chasing the spotlight, hungry for recognition, or you're in the shadows, silent and unassuming, trying to escape attention altogether. Sigma females defy that binary. They understand that true power isn't in being noticed constantly, nor is it in complete invisibility. It's in mastering the balance, being visible enough to assert influence and leave impact, yet hidden enough to avoid manipulation or ownership. This in-between space makes others uncomfortable because it can't be controlled. You can't measure her worth by likes, followers, or gossip. You can't predict her actions because she isn't performing for anyone. This middle ground also allows them to operate on their own terms. They can enter a room and shift the energy without being the center of attention. They can achieve results, command respect, or change outcomes without needing approval. People who try to put them in a conventional mold, either as someone craving validation or someone hiding from it, fail because she exists outside that expectation entirely. It's not just about avoidance or neutrality. It's strategic autonomy. By rejecting both extremes, Sigma females maintain freedom, influence, and control over themselves in a world that constantly tries to claim and define them. That tension between being seen enough to matter and hidden enough to remain untouchable is what makes them so profoundly misunderstood. To those who insist on labels and predictable patterns, she may seem paradoxical, but for her, it's the only way to exist authentically and powerfully. Number 4. They intimidate men by treating them as replaceable. Sigma females intimidate men not because they want to, but because they operate from a place of unshakable reality. They don't view men as providers, protectors, or saviors, roles society often conditions women to assign automatically. Instead, they see men simply as individuals, equal players in the game of life, each responsible for their own choices, actions, and value. This perspective is neutral, grounded, and unapologetic, but it can be terrifying to men who are used to being treated as indispensable or automatically elevated in importance. For many men, self-worth has been subtly reinforced by being needed, admired, or constantly validated. When a Sigma female refuses to inflate that sense of worth, it disrupts their internal narrative. She doesn't offer false praise, seek to fix or revolve around a man's ego. She interacts with him based on respect, compatibility, and integrity, nothing more. To men who are insecure, this neutrality feels like rejection, even though it isn't personal. They aren't being excluded, they're just not being granted a pedestal they didn't earn. This approach is rarely malicious, yet it produces powerful results. Men who meet Sigma females often feel both intrigued and unnerved. They can't manipulate her through charm, flattery, or entitlement, and that's a foreign experience for those accustomed to easy influence. She refuses to distort reality for comfort or ego, and that honesty, subtle, unwavering, and unflinching, can make insecure men defensive, frustrated, or even angry. They see her refusal to prioritize them as a personal attack, when in fact it's simply her refusal to participate in the illusion of inflated importance. For Sigma females, this isn't about dominance. It's about clarity and self-respect. Men are replaceable not because she doesn't value people, but because she values herself and the truth of interactions above all else. She measures connections based on reality, compatibility, and mutual respect, not societal expectation or neediness. This kind of interaction is a mirror, forcing men to confront their own insecurities, entitlement, or dependence. That is why Sigma females are so misunderstood and often feared. They reveal the uncomfortable truth that no one is indispensable, and that worth must be earned, not assumed. In a world built on inflated egos and dependency, that simple reality feels revolutionary, and more than a little intimidating. Number 5. They're accused of arrogance for protecting their space. Sigma females are often accused of arrogance simply because they protect their space, but that accusation is a misunderstanding of their priorities and intelligence. Setting boundaries is not an act of ego, it's a survival mechanism. In a world overflowing with noise, unnecessary drama, and superficial interactions, they refuse to let every random opinion, obligation, or emotional demand invade their mental space. To them, mental clarity and energy are precious commodities, and they guard them fiercely. Most people mistake this careful filtering as aloofness or superiority because they themselves operate under different rules. They're used to constant social engagement, to entertaining every request, to absorbing the drama and expectations of others. A Sigma female doesn't do that, and it immediately triggers judgment. She doesn't explain herself, she doesn't apologize for saying no, and she doesn't adjust her behavior to make others comfortable. From the outside, that can seem like arrogance, as though she believes she is above the rest of the world, but in reality it's about self-respect and efficiency. She understands that energy wasted on meaningless interactions is energy stolen from her goals, her personal growth, and the people who actually matter in her life. Filtering isn't selective cruelty, it's a form of intelligence. It allows her to focus on what is real, productive, and aligned with her purpose. And while people around her may feel rejected or dismissed, the truth is that her boundaries create a protective bubble that ensures she operates at her highest capacity. Because she doesn't bend or dilute herself to meet social expectations, Sigma females are consistently misread. Her assertiveness, clarity, and refusal to entertain shallow energy get labeled as arrogance or difficulty. But what others interpret as a flaw is actually a strength, a sign of someone who understands the value of her time, her mind, and her emotional bandwidth. She doesn't need approval to exist comfortably in her own space. This is why many misunderstand her. They see the boundary itself, not the reasoning behind it. They interpret independence as superiority, focus as coldness, and self-protection as arrogance. Sigma females don't just live differently, they operate on a level of self-awareness that most people can't even recognize, let alone respect. Number 6. They make people nervous by never needing saving. Sigma females make people nervous because they never need saving. And that simple fact rattles the expectations society has built around women. From a young age, many women are conditioned to rely on someone else for validation, protection, or direction, and in turn, society romanticizes the idea of a woman being rescued or guided by others. It's a story repeated in movies, books, and even everyday life. The woman who needs saving is vulnerable, relatable, and therefore lovable. Sigma females reject that narrative entirely. They don't wait for someone to notice they're struggling. They solve their own problems quietly and efficiently. They don't broadcast their hardships or hand over control of their lives to others, because they've learned that relying on someone else is slow, risky, and often disappointing. This self-reliance isn't a calculated act to impress or intimidate, it's just reality. They don't need approval, assistance, or someone else's intervention to survive or succeed, and that independence makes people uncomfortable. Insecure individuals in particular struggle with this. Their instinct is to feel important by being needed. When a woman appears to be completely capable of handling her life without anyone's help, it frustrates them because it deprives them of the sense of control or relevance they expect. They want to feel like the hero, the indispensable force, or the protector, but Sigma females don't give anyone that role. They don't play into dependency or manufactured vulnerability. The tension created by this dynamic is subtle but powerful. People around her often sense that they cannot manipulate, influence, or save her, and that realization is unnerving. She is free from expectation, free from obligation, and free from the usual social scripts. That freedom isn't just personal, it's contagious. It forces others to confront their own weaknesses and assumptions whether they like it or not. This is why Sigma females are so frequently misunderstood. Their self-sufficiency isn't arrogance or emotional distance. It's mastery of their own life. By never needing saving, they highlight the illusions that society clings to about dependence, protection, and control. And that clarity, whether people admit it or not, makes them profoundly unsettling and extraordinary. Number 7. They're misread as loners when they're actually strategic connectors. Sigma females are often misread as loners, but that couldn't be further from the truth. They don't go out of their way to amass large groups of friends or followers, and they aren't interested in networking for the sake of visibility or social validation. To outsiders, this behavior looks like isolation, aloofness, or even social weakness. People assume that someone who doesn't broadcast their relationships or chase social status must be alone or disconnected. In reality, Sigma females are highly selective and intentional about the connections they maintain. Their small circle isn't a limitation, it's a strength. Every person they allow close is carefully evaluated for loyalty, integrity, and mutual respect. These bonds are far deeper and more resilient than the superficial connections that dominate most social networks. While others spread themselves thin trying to maintain hundreds of acquaintances, Sigma females focus on quality over quantity. The people in their inner circle are often fiercely loyal and capable of unwavering support because they have earned that level of trust and attention. This strategic approach to relationships also makes them incredibly effective connectors when it matters. They understand influence and leverage not as a means of self-promotion, but as a tool to create meaningful impact. They can bridge people, ideas, and opportunities in ways that others might not see coming. Their influence is subtle but powerful, operating beneath the radar of public recognition. The world sees a quiet, solitary figure, but behind that perception lies a web of carefully cultivated, high-value connections. What makes this even more unsettling to outsiders is that they can't predict her interactions or understand her influence. People who rely on visible networks to gauge power or importance often underestimate Sigma females, assuming that someone with a small social footprint must be inconsequential. They don't realize that her restraint, focus, and discernment actually make her far more formidable than anyone with a sprawling, shallow network. Sigma females are misunderstood because people equate volume with value. They confuse visibility with significance. In reality, the Sigma female's choice to maintain a selective, high-quality inner circle is a calculated strategy, a way to conserve energy, maintain control, and ensure that her influence is precise, intentional, and enduring. The quietness of her connections is deceptive. Her reach is far stronger than most realize. Number 8. They're brutally honest without needing an audience. Sigma females are brutally honest without needing an audience, and that honesty is one of the reasons they're so misunderstood. Unlike most people who time their truth for applause, recognition, or social leverage, Sigma females don't perform their integrity. They speak uncomfortable truths regardless of who's watching, who's listening, or who might approve. It's not about being contrarian or shocking. It's about refusing to compromise reality for comfort. This kind of honesty can be disarming, even unsettling to those accustomed to social cushioning. Many people operate in a world softened by politeness, filters, and strategic omissions. They rely on sugarcoating, exaggerations, or avoidance to keep interactions smooth and ego intact. When a Sigma female enters the scene and delivers her unfiltered truth, it exposes the cracks in that comfortable illusion. People feel the impact immediately because it demands confrontation with reality, and that's uncomfortable for those used to curated versions of life. Her honesty isn't performative either. She doesn't announce it, write a manifesto, or seek validation for it. It exists quietly in every interaction, in the way she calls out dishonesty, hypocrisy, or nonsense. She doesn't do it for drama or reputation. She does it because she refuses to participate in anything less than truth. And that refusal is precisely why people often mislabel her as harsh, insensitive, or even cold. They mistake her commitment to reality for personal judgment or malice, but it's none of those things. Being brutally honest without needing an audience also gives her a sense of freedom most people never experience. She isn't chained to social expectation, popularity, or approval. She can express herself fully and directly, and in doing so, she forces others to grapple with their own avoidance, insecurities, or dependence on false narratives. That level of self-possession is rare, and it makes her intimidating, frustrating, and endlessly fascinating. Her unflinching honesty is a mirror. It shows the world how much people rely on comfort over truth, and it reveals just how many are unprepared to face reality without the buffer of applause or affirmation. That's why Sigma females are constantly misunderstood. They speak the truth not to perform, not to dominate, but simply because living any other way would be dishonest, and they refuse to live a lie. Number 9. They're social contradictions that don't fit charts. Sigma females are social contradictions that don't fit charts, and that's exactly why they're so frequently misunderstood. Society has a way of putting women into neat little boxes. You're either nurturing or ruthless, submissive or dominant, soft or aggressive. People are taught to expect consistency, to categorize behavior so they can predict it and feel comfortable. Sigma females reject that framework entirely. They don't live according to someone else's template, and they don't feel the need to signal their identity in ways others can digest. What this looks like to outsiders is confusing or even threatening. One moment, a Sigma female can be deeply empathetic, offering guidance or support with warmth that feels natural and unforced. The next moment, she can pivot to being unyielding, strategic, and assertive, cutting through nonsense with a precision that catches people off guard. Those who only see black and white patterns of behavior often label her inconsistent, fickle, or even fake, because her actions don't match the scripts they expect women to follow. But in reality, she is demonstrating mastery of duality. Her ability to bend depending on context is not manipulation, it's situational intelligence. She understands that life is fluid and that different situations require different approaches. Around people who need encouragement, she can soften. In moments that demand decisiveness, she hardens. This adaptability is a form of power, allowing her to navigate the world without being constrained by rigid social norms. The danger for observers is that this duality exposes their own limitations. People are uncomfortable when someone refuses to be pinned down because it challenges their assumptions about control and predictability. They want her to fit a category so they can process her, but she refuses to play by those rules. Her independence, intelligence, and flexibility leave a subtle but unmistakable impression. She cannot be owned, defined, or fully understood by anyone else. Sigma females are misunderstood precisely because they operate outside binaries. Their contradictions aren't flaws, they're strengths. They move fluidly between roles, emotions, and strategies, and that complexity makes them powerful, intriguing, and sometimes unnerving to the world around them. She doesn't fit the charts because she's creating her own, and anyone trying to simplify her is missing the point entirely. Number 10. They're feminine without selling femininity. Sigma females are feminine without selling femininity, and that alone makes them profoundly misunderstood. Society constantly pressures women to perform their femininity, to make it visible, tangible, and consumable for others. It's expected through charm, appearance, flirtation, or social compliance, often turning femininity into a kind of performance. Many women learn early that their value is tied to how well they play this role, how well they please, how well they fit into a predictable script of gendered behavior. Sigma females reject all of that. They embody femininity, but on their own terms. Their grace, subtlety, and charm aren't tools for manipulation or validation. They're simply part of who they are. Unlike women who broadcast their femininity for attention or social reward, Sigma females carry it effortlessly and selectively, like a secret weapon or armor they can put on or take off depending on the moment. It isn't performative, it isn't about earning approval. It's a natural extension of their self-possession, a reflection of confidence rather than a strategy to meet expectations. This independence in expression often confuses others. People expect predictable displays of femininity, the kind that signals compliance, approachability, or social alignment. When they encounter a Sigma female, they can't categorize her. She may be soft and inviting one moment and distant and unbothered the next. She doesn't fit the narrative of always charming, always yielding, always performing. And that unpredictability makes people uneasy. They can't place her on a scale of value because she isn't performing to it. Her femininity is simultaneously present and untouchable, and that duality is a form of power. She can influence, captivate, and command respect without needing to conform to anyone's idea of what a woman should be. She doesn't need to charm for approval or flaunt beauty for recognition. Her identity, her presence, and her intelligence are enough. That subtlety, femininity without selling it, makes her a mystery, an enigma, and a quiet force that challenges social norms at every turn. Sigma females are misunderstood because their femininity cannot be measured by conventional standards. It exists independently, as natural and unclaimed as their autonomy itself. The world expects predictability, but she refuses it, and that refusal is what makes her exceptional, magnetic, and completely untouchable. Number 11. They refuse to exploit weak men, and that's seen as weakness. Sigma females refuse to exploit weak men, and that decision is frequently misunderstood as weakness. In a society where manipulation, control, and leveraging relationships for personal gain are normalized, many people expect women to take advantage of men's insecurities or resources. Some do it consciously, others unconsciously, and both patterns are often rewarded or socially validated. Sigma females, however, operate on an entirely different level. They are capable of influence and understanding power dynamics, but they choose not to manipulate. Their interactions are based on authenticity, respect, and real connection, rather than opportunism or gain. This restraint can easily be misinterpreted. To the opportunistic, someone who doesn't take advantage of vulnerability appears naive, passive, or even morally soft. They assume that anyone with the awareness to exploit situations would automatically do so. What they fail to realize is that Sigma females are fully aware. They see the weaknesses, the vulnerabilities, and the potential levers, but they deliberately choose not to use them. Their self-control is not a lack of power. It's power applied with intention. They are not swayed by the temptation to dominate or control because they operate from a higher strategic plane. This approach forces a different kind of respect. Men who attempt to manipulate or exploit quickly realize that it won't work. Sigma females set boundaries naturally and calmly, allowing interactions to either exist on real terms or dissolve entirely. Those who misunderstand them often interpret this refusal as disinterest or emotional distance, when it's actually an advanced form of control. By not participating in games of manipulation, she dictates the terms of engagement without aggression, preserving her autonomy and maintaining psychological authority. Ultimately, Sigma females create bonds that are meaningful, intentional, and reciprocal. They don't need to extract value from someone to validate their worth or achieve success. This makes their relationships rare, resilient, and deeper than the superficial alliances that dominate most social interactions. The fact that they reject opportunistic behavior is not a flaw. It's a signal of intelligence, discipline, and mastery over both themselves and social dynamics. That's why they're so frequently misunderstood. People confuse ethical restraint with weakness, morality with naivety, and autonomy with distance. In truth, Sigma females operate from a level of clarity and control few can comprehend, and that restraint is one of their most powerful, defining traits. Number 12. They don't fit feminist or traditionalist labels. Sigma females don't fit feminist or traditionalist labels, and that makes them deeply misunderstood by both sides. Traditionalists expect women to follow certain scripts, marry young, prioritize family, defer to authority, and generally conform to socially accepted roles. Feminists, on the other hand, often celebrate women who actively engage in group movements, advocate for social causes, or align themselves publicly with collective agendas. Sigma females, however, operate outside both paradigms. They are too independent, self-directed, and autonomous to satisfy traditionalist expectations, yet too uninterested in group politics, social validation, or ideological allegiance to fully align with feminist structures. This creates confusion and at times frustration for both camps. Traditionalists may label her rebellious, difficult, or ungrateful for not fitting their model of femininity. Feminists may dismiss her as apathetic, detached, or lacking solidarity because she doesn't visibly participate in causes or social hierarchies. In truth, neither interpretation is accurate. Sigma females aren't rejecting one side or the other out of disdain. They simply refuse to let anyone else define their choices, priorities, or worth. Their autonomy is non-negotiable, and they won't subordinate themselves to any collective narrative, however noble or socially approved it may seem. This refusal to pledge allegiance isn't isolation or disinterest. It's a conscious strategy to retain full control over their lives. Sigma females pick and choose what matters based on their values, intelligence, and long-term vision, not on the expectations or pressures of external groups. They operate independently while still observing, learning, and engaging selectively, which often leaves others misreading them as disengaged or indifferent. The truth is, Sigma females redefine what it means to exist as a modern woman outside of imposed categories. They are autonomous, self-directed, and guided by their own principles rather than the rules of any social, political, or ideological camp. That refusal to conform, to choose sides, or to perform loyalty is precisely what makes them so powerful and, simultaneously, so misunderstood. People are uncomfortable when someone refuses to fit their boxes, but for Sigma females, living by their own rules is not just a preference. It's the only way they can exist authentically and uncompromisingly. After everything we've explored, one thing becomes crystal clear. Sigma females are profoundly misunderstood, not because they are mysterious for the sake of it, but because they refuse to conform to the world's expectations. They operate on a level of self-possession, intelligence, and authenticity that challenges every conventional measure of worth, femininity, and influence. They don't need saving, they don't manipulate for gain, and they don't perform to be liked. They are brutally honest without an audience, selectively connect with the right people, and navigate life with a fluidity that most people mistake for inconsistency. The world wants them to fit neatly into boxes, submissive or dominant, visible or hidden, compliant or rebellious, but Sigma females refuse every label. They are independent without arrogance, feminine without selling it, compassionate without weakness, and strategic without exploitation. They protect their space, honor their energy, and measure relationships by authenticity rather than social expectation. That combination makes them simultaneously magnetic, intimidating, and profoundly misunderstood. But here's the truth. Their power lies in their freedom. They are untouchable in a way few can comprehend, not because they seek dominance, but because they have mastered the art of living fully on their own terms. They are the rare few who can command respect, influence without ownership, and thrive without the constant approval of the world around them. In every paradox, every contradiction, and every refusal to conform, Sigma females reveal a blueprint for autonomy and strength that most will never even recognize. To truly understand them, one must accept that they cannot and will not be fully decoded. That discomfort, that awe, that fascination is not a flaw in them. It's a reflection of how rarely someone refuses to exist according to anyone else's rules. Sigma females are not mistakes to be corrected or enigmas to be solved. They are forces of nature, self-contained, self-aware, and unapologetically extraordinary. If this video gave you a new perspective on Sigma females and their extraordinary misunderstood power, make sure you don't miss out on future insights. Hit that subscribe button to join our community, like this video to show your support, and share it with someone who needs to understand the depth of a Sigma female. We want to hear from you too. Comment below with your thoughts, experiences, or which point surprised you the most. Every interaction helps us keep bringing you content that's brutally honest, eye-opening, and unlike anything else out there. Don't just watch. Engage, learn, and be part of the conversation. Your support fuels the truth we uncover.